It's so easy nowadays to just dunk on Anthem. Actually, you know what, to be fair, correction, Anthem is constantly dunking on itself. I sometimes preface a video like this with a disclaimer as an attempt to appease some of the rabid fanboys that inevitably come out of the woodwork, but I don't have the energy today. I just did another video before this, it was an indie game spotlight, and I actually really enjoyed it, so fuck that, and fuck them. Every time I think that's it, nothing else to cover, time to move on, something jumps out that is just too major. Like how Anthem shuts down PS4s and causes unnecessary database rebuild, or a peculiar set of bans, etc., etc. Well, this one is a whole new can of worms and is just too much not to talk about because whatever anyone says, it's obvious there is an appetite for this. And to go one step further, cases like Anthem have to be made an example of. This shit's unacceptable, and Anthem 76 needs to be hit hard because at a certain point, it stops mattering whether or not you are having fun with it, when it even works, and it has to be recognized that Anthem is an objective piece of shit that cannot be allowed to endure without being absolutely mauled for its preposterously bad framework, structure, and release quality. Today's issue is damage calculations and scaling. The reason it's worth covering is because this is just the tip of the iceberg, and we are in for a pretty epic can of worms as the depths to which this issue descends are now tested and uncovered. The knowledge originated in a Reddit thread by the user Yeet Lord Supreme, and in his thread he outlines exactly what is occurring. He goes in depth to explain his component and gear allocation while then detailing how a default common weapon that is equipped as a stock piece of gear with a fresh loadout does more damage than a high-ranked masterwork gun, which supposedly, according to on-screen numbers, is significantly more powerful. Here is a perfect display of the issue. A gun with over 1400 damage on its indicator is dealing less damage when compared directly to the percentage of an enemy's shield that it drains than a gun that deals 238 damage. This stands as stone cold proof that the damage numbers in Anthem are aesthetic. They have no actual correlation to the damage players are dealing. A number could read 10, and you could be dealing more damage than if the number said 10,000. As I said before, this is the tip of the iceberg, and when you keep in mind the scaling issues Anthem has already been suffering through, where weapon damage in the 100,000 range is used to drop enemy bosses while other damage mechanisms feel underpowered and useless, and on top of that, the complete lack of a stats page or panel of any kind, in a build-based min-max oriented looter shooter, it becomes yet again obvious, as if it weren't already, that Anthem is broken from the ground up to the point of zero tolerance. Now, BioWare has indeed responded to this thread already and made it clear that their official position is that this is a bug that will be worked on because something is certainly not working properly. But how many times can the phrase "it's just a bug" be used before it gets hammered home that the game is, to use a food analogy here, undercooked to the point of being unsafe to consume? Games very rarely get recalled, but it is my stance that Anthem is right now standing dangerously close to that precipice. It should not have made it past certification at all, due to its interaction with the PlayStation 4 console wherein a hard shutdown occurs, but beyond that, it is nearing the point now where a full recall and relaunch is not out of the question. I highly doubt they would ever actually do it, considering the ramifications it could hold and the irreparable damage it would deal to whatever player base they have left, but the product is so defective in so many ways, it is not possible in my eyes to now defend this product. Some players will inevitably stammer out some sort of defense, but this latest issue shows a clear chasm between possibly the most critical piece of information in a difficulty-scaled loot-based game and the player. The information of how much damage you are dealing, being able to build your character with the goal of increasing your strength, is where the whole point of the game lies. When you see 100 damage versus 1000 damage, you need to reliably know that you are now 10 times as strong from an offensive perspective. That information is now proven to be either catastrophically bugged in Anthem or outright divorced from reality and useless. There is a pretty reasonable stance to take when bugs emerge that pertain to damage calculations in similar titles. If there are small discrepancies, they can be overlooked because in a general sense, you still know that you are increasing in strength and likely still also have other means to analyze your character, through a stats panel or something to that end. But in Anthem, oh, Anthem. The discrepancy is so massive between calculation and displayed indicator that players now have to realize that their only stat feedback is totally unreliable. The bug, as they state, is originating from the scaling system in place to compress the gap between players of a high level with players at a low level. But to expand on that concept, even in the event this damage calculation problem is indeed isolated within that system, which has somehow brought a level 1 rifle up to a stronger relative power than a level 45 masterwork, and disconnected the visual indicator to boot, even when working as intended, a system like that almost discredits the process of gear acquisition entirely. The idea of allowing friends, regardless of level, to play together is a good one, but when considering the fact this is a level-based loot curve-oriented game where the hunt is predicated on gathering stronger items to build up a power fantasy, the fact that a level 1 can come in and be just as strong, in this temporary case far stronger, than your entire team that has been working constantly for the best gear, does it not feel like there is a slight contradiction here in the premise of the grind? This issue with Anthem also has a lot of different players starting to have aha moments, if you will, contemplating how they have been slotting inscriptions that increase damage, but the health bar remained unchanged when they would dish out damage against enemies at the now standardly utilized Grandmaster 1 difficulty level. Such a case would highlight some additional connections between broken stats and damage calculations, but since the primary tool that has been used so far to understand whether or not stats are even functioning is the visual damage numbers themselves, a problem with the calculation could mean that there are more severe underlying issues with the gear itself that just didn't get noticed, because how could it get noticed? You equip a 10% damage item, and your visible damage stat increases by 10%. All appears to be working as normal. Unless a case like this emerges where the discrepancy is extremely severe, the fact that a false calculation is displayed would already stonewall most players into thinking things are working. The sad truth is that Anthem was barely tested, if at all. The player base as a whole, after a subsequent full purchase, are the ones testing the game. It seems that there was never a deep dive into their scaling algorithms either, since enemies scale based on what's attacking them, it appears, and somehow the intention was to have enemies scaled to each individual player as well, to promote the whole cohesive group angle. How can that possibly have an organic effect on gear power scaling, and what the hell is the point of a pilot level even? Not to mention the fact that enemies do not scale based on number of players, and overall it's just a convoluted mess that we are now seeing manifest in this type of issue. Here's an angle to consider. Since this has been claimed as a bug by BioWare themselves, are they going to ban players that now use the default weapon that is improperly modifying enemy difficulty in order to complete content faster? If we apply a very basic template to past situations, now that we know the streamer Glad was banned specifically for using, in a very limited way, he claims himself, a storm exploit that made for faster kill times because of an ultimate skill bug, will BioWare ban the players who use this breach in code to kill enemies faster? Because it is faster, significantly so, and can probably be pushed further when grouped in coordinated teams. If they wish to stay true to their already idiotic principles of banning players for economy exploitation in a PvE-only game that has no trade as well, they will need to issue a wave of bans because, by the same logic, using the bug would destroy the experience of others, even though it doesn't. So they either double down on what is already a pretty incendiary position after a further and more damaging breach, or they reverse their position entirely, rendering the previous and self-inflicted wave of bad press entirely unnecessary. The problem of exploitation is also exacerbated by the desperate need for a generosity patch. Players are craving the ability to min-max their builds with the high-tiered loot. Some even forgive the lack of a character or stat panel, the now broken visual damage indicators, and the problematic scaling, and have soldiered on through thick and thin. But when an option to speed up the grind rears its head, in combination with horribly balanced generosity levels, it spurs players into using the exploits or bugs that BioWare seems to be so against. They need to motivate players to play the right way, not simply punish them for not playing the way the developers intended. It's a very common phenomenon. A development team pictures method X to be the most effective method of doing something, or designs it to be true or thinks that they did. Players discover that method Y is more effective and use it heavily, and then method Z comes along, which neither anticipated and is the most effective out of all of them. If the motivation to do things the way the developers want, or use the method X, is non-existent, and the Y method is broken or tedious, players will use the Z method in a heartbeat, which in this case is exploitation, because from the ground up, Anthem is truly broken. At a certain point, the "but I'm having fun with it, so shut up" attitude ceases to be a valid position. Supporting Anthem without recognizing the fundamentally broken product that it is no longer acceptable. Players can wish it was good all they want. They're not barred from personally having fun, but it's critical in the modern gaming industry to know and be cognitively aware of the fact that Anthem is broken, unfinished, unready, and unworthy of being priced the way it is or launched in the state that it was. That's it though. Anthem is the new Fallout 76. I said it wasn't for a while, but after everything that's come out, it absolutely is. It's just as broken. It's not as much of a reskin, I guess. It has more unique elements to be sure, and I believe more potential, but it is just as broken. But yeah, enough for today. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. We have various different gaming communities such as Facebook, Discord, and our own gaming forums as well. Some merch and some other stuff too. But that's it. I'll cut it there and I'll stop rambling. Thank you all for watching and have a nice night.